Your body has its own internal clock that lets you know what time it is, even if you don't have a watch or a smartphone. So how does your body know what time it is? If this question popped into your head as you woke up one morning, you're not alone. Scientists have been wondering the same thing for a long time. They used to think that all living things had clocks like ours with hands and numbers that ticked by until it was time for bed. But now they know better. In fact, there are actually two ways our bodies tell the time. The first method is perfect for keeping track of the passing minutes, and the second helps us keep to a regular schedule day after day. Together, these techniques allow us to maintain our biological clocks. Our biological clocks let us know when we should sleep, when we should wake up, when we should eat, and when we should digest our food. These clocks also control our metabolism, temperature, hormone production, and many other important functions. But how do these clocks work? To find out, scientists have conducted experiments on fruit flies, mice, hamsters, chipmunks, and humans. In these studies, participants were put into rooms with lots of light and no clocks or windows, so they couldn't tell what time it was. But even without any external references, their bodies still kept ticking along, keeping reasonable guesses for what time it actually was. That means there must be something inside us keeping track of the hours. Well, it turns out that what we've been calling our internal clocks are actually groups of neurons, cells that transmit messages between different parts of the body. These neurons are located in the brain, and some of them make chemicals called neuropeptides. Neuropeptides are similar to hormones, which are chemicals that help control how cells and organs do their work. One type of neuropeptide produced by these neurons is called PDF. Like many neuropeptides, PDF is released into the bloodstream and travels to other parts of the body. There, it activates certain genes, which contain instructions for making proteins. So by controlling which genes get turned on or off, neuropeptides can control many different processes. Scientists know that PDF helps control the circadian rhythm, the cycle of bodily functions that repeats about every 24 hours. But until recently, they didn't know exactly how it did this. So researchers at Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois decided to find out in 2023. The team knew that the neurons that produce PDF only become active once per day. At the start of their experiment, they injected fruit flies with a chemical that glowed whenever PDF was present. Then they exposed the flies to pulses of light at various times to see how their internal clocks responded. After a few days, they noticed that the flies' PDF levels started to peak at the same time each day, right around the same time the room lights turned on. This meant that the flies' internal clocks were synced with the 24-hour light-dark cycle of their environment. The researchers wanted to figure out how this happened, so they extracted proteins from the flies and analyzed them with a device called a mass spectrometer. This instrument measures the mass of molecules. By identifying molecules and measuring their mass, scientists can learn more about what roles they play in living things. To their surprise, they found that the levels of two proteins in the fly samples changed drastically over the course of a day. One protein was made of 12 amino acids and the other of 17, and the amount of each changed depending on whether the flies were exposed to light or kept in the dark. Since no one had ever studied these proteins before, the researchers gave them names. The shorter one became known as short isoform 1 or SIF1, while the longer one was named long isoform 1 or LIF1. Now the team needed to figure out what these mysterious proteins actually did. Since they only changed expression during the flies' active hours, the researchers hypothesized that they might have something to do with the circadian rhythm. To test this, they genetically modified the flies so that they didn't produce either protein. Without SIF1 or LIF1, the flies' internal clocks were thrown into chaos. They could still sense changes in daylight hours, but their circadian rhythms were totally off. Flies that lacked SIF1 slept during the day and were active at night, and flies that lacked LIF1 couldn't fall asleep unless it was already nighttime. So it looks like SIF1 and LIF1 are important for setting our internal clocks. But what exactly do they do? Well, the answer was hiding in plain sight. In the course of their experiments, the research team had noticed that the proteins appeared to stick together, and since then, other labs have confirmed that SIF1 and LIF1 join forces to form dimers. This discovery prompted the team to take another look at the mass spectrometer data. They found that the two proteins seemed to interact with PDF. The researchers figured out that LIF1 binds to PDF and transports it into the nucleus, the part of the cell that contains our DNA. Once inside the nucleus, SIF1 helps PDF switch certain genes on or off. Together, these three molecules control the production of other proteins, which ultimately drive the circadian rhythm. And the whole system is kicked into action by light. When light enters the fly's compound eyes, photoreceptor cells send signals to a group of neurons that sit just above their brains. These neurons contain the molecular components that allow the flies to keep time. Some of these components are similar to the proteins found in our retinas, and some are similar to the proteins that produce our circadian rhythm. So there's a good chance that flies and humans use similar mechanisms to keep time. So far, the team has found evidence of SIF1 and LIF1 in fruit flies, mice, hamsters, and humans. That means these proteins may play an important role in our circadian rhythms too. Knowing what time it is one thing, but knowing what time it will be soon is another. For instance, if you're trying to stay awake until bedtime, you need to be able to predict how many more hours you have until you can go to sleep. Well, your body has a second clock for that too. This clock is located in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, a group of neurons in the hypothalamus region of the brain. The SCN receives signals from the eyes that tell it what time it is. It also receives input from other parts of the brain that tell it what time you want to go to sleep. With this information, the SCN sets the duration of your circadian rhythm and controls the timing of many other functions, such as the release of hormones. But how does it do this? Well, one key is a group of genes called the clock genes. These genes make proteins that regulate the length of the circadian rhythm. When they're turned on, they promote the production of proteins that promote sleepiness. When they're turned off, they stop producing these sleepy proteins, helping you stay awake. A group of researchers led by Amita Sehgal at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia has been investigating the molecular basis of this timer. Their study was published in the journal Cell in 2023. Using fruit flies, the team identified 3 proteins involved in the timer mechanism. 2 of the proteins, called PDP1 and PPY, bind to the third protein, which regulates the activity of the clock genes. According to Sehgal, these proteins act like an hourglass. As they interact with the gene regulator, they steadily lose energy until they fall apart and the genes turn off. After a while, they recharge and bind back together, restarting the process. Now the team wants to figure out how these proteins recharge. Our body temperature fluctuates throughout the day, rising in the afternoon and falling at night. And according to Sehgal, that fluctuation might affect the molecular timer. If they're correct, that would mean that the body's temperature might play a role in resetting the circadian rhythm. To learn more about this, the researchers exposed the flies to brief periods of high temperatures at different points in their cycles. They found that if the temperature change occurred early in the cycle, it caused the flies to wake up earlier the next day. But if the temperature change happened later in the cycle, the flies' sleep schedules stayed the same. The results suggest that our body's temperature can indeed influence our circadian rhythm. It might seem like a small thing, but being able to predict what time it will be soon is essential for staying alert or getting ready for bed. And it's yet another example of the amazing ways our bodies know things that we don't even realize we're thinking about.